Okay, then welcome to the ESPC 2019. We are sitting here at the Community Reporter booth, and I have Vesa here as my interviewee.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you are Principal Program Manager for Microsoft.
Yep.
So for me, you are the Mr. SharePoint Development.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
As I said to you, I was visiting one of your tutorials a few years ago, and now I have so many questions, but maybe the first of all is, what are you thinking about the ESPC so far?
Yeah, so it's the first day. It's the first day, and it's the lunchtime. That's why there's so many people actually walking around. Well, there's a lot of people here. It's great to see the excitement. We had a really exciting Jeff Teeper, Dan and Omar and Naomi keynote in the morning as well. So that went really well, and people are super excited on being here. And it's great to see the positive vibes, which we always have in the ESPC. So people are happy, people are active, and they wanna engage, which is really good.
Cool. And you have 2 sessions here and the keynote on Thursday.
Yes,
What
yes.
can we expect?
So I have a session tomorrow, Wednesday. I have a session related on our latest on SharePoint Framework. So that's around talking about what's going to be in the SharePoint Framework 1.10, which is going to be released soon, but not during this week. So pretty soon. And then also the future around SharePoint Framework. Then on Thursday morning, we have a dev keynote, which is not only me, it's actually me, Mike Amelan, Jeremy Thake, Paolo Pialorsi, and Laura Kokkarinen. But this is one of those things which we always do, actually, that it's always says keynote Vesa, but then there's always friends. So it's almost like a surprise who's going to pop in and do the demos, which is fine. But in general, because I'm the community person, I'm kind of the hosting the keynote, and that's why it's a Vesa keynote. Right after that keynote, then we have the PMP session, which is a 1 hour to talk about the open source and community and what has happened there as well, which is, well, right after the keynote, and looking forward on that one as well. So.
Okay. I'm traveling a lot over the last weeks, and I'm not sure what you're thinking about, but I think there's a hype for Microsoft Teams at the moment. What does it mean for a SharePoint developer? Do we need to switch to Teams now and start developing there, or
no?
What do you think?
So for Microsoft Teams means a lot. So for which sounds already interesting, but it is one of the most important products for this fiscal year, and that's what happens with Microsoft. We always push certain products, and that they can gain the let's say a stable usage, and then we keep on evolving and evolving from there. Like SharePoint has existed already 2 decades already, pretty much, or more than almost 2 decades. So it's already a let's say a matured product. Now for Teams, we are now pushing it heavily. The adoption looks good, but what's cool about the extensibility and development model is that the development model can be the same. So using the SharePoint framework, you can actually extend and do modifications in Teams as well. Well, certain modifications. And then there's chatbots and all of that stuff as well. Which, by the way, you mentioned the Vienna. In Vienna, was it 3 years ago, 4 years ago?
Yes.
We actually showed the chatbots in Teams as well. So it's kind of interesting as well. But the Teams definitely is a interesting development platform. Teams is meant to be the landing page of the company, the collaboration nowadays. Maybe that used to be more SharePoint in the past. But for developers, I think the development models will be exactly the same, which is a big thing.
Okay. To be honest, the Microsoft Graph is part of the developer platform.
Microsoft Graph is definitely there, a big part, yeah.
I didn't use it since yet. So when should I use the Microsoft Graph when I have so many other possibilities to get my SharePoint data?
Well, obviously, in the case of SharePoint, if you come from a SharePoint, like in your case, you come from a SharePoint background, it sounds weird that we suddenly come up with a new API surface and we say that you should be using this, which is actually more limited than the native API. So in your case, you might be still using the REST APIs and CSM APIs, and that's fine. But if you think about the Graph, the value of Graph is the fact that for new products, they expose all of their APIs through Graph. So as an example, Planner or Microsoft Teams, they do not have a native APIs because they're new products. And really the key value of that one is that from a developer perspective, if you can authenticate or authorize the user against the Graph, you get access on all of those APIs. So the development model is exactly the same when you hit an API for Planner or an API for Teams or an API for SharePoint. But sure, if you come from a SharePoint background, the REST APIs is an option, but it's a unique API. It's not a consistent API. Yeah. It's a SharePoint-specific API, right?
So when I want to become a cloud developer for the whole Microsoft 365, then Microsoft Graph is
a good option,
approach.
yes. Graph is but again, so there are limits on the Graph and the things what is being supported. So quite often you might need to fall back on a REST API or a CSAM API, and that's fine. That is a completely valid option as well.
Okay, I think there's so many changes the last months or years. So one big change for us was the modern UI, because when you are deep dive SharePoint developer and you are building your farm solutions, and now you have Office 365, you have the modern UI. Did you recognize some differences or difficulties when you had to switch to modern UI?
Yeah, so the modern UI was kind of introduced already many years ago, and we've been gradually then introducing new capabilities and options on the modern UI. So right now in Ignite, there was a lot of new announcements, which we actually talked about this morning in the keynote by Dan, I think, covered them into this morning. So we're finally getting to the moment where the modern UI, you can achieve similar modern portals capabilities and experiences like scheduling of pages, publishing and all of that. So the transition from the classic portals has been kind of delayed because there has been lack of capabilities. But now we're finally getting to the moment where you can actually achieve almost everything in modern like you were able to do in classic.
Yeah.
But there has been delays, like you said, and it's a different way of designing the portal. There's different capabilities. Maybe there's something which is in modern, which isn't in classic. But that's the area where we're investing. So definitely as a recommendation for Microsoft, we want everybody to go to modern because that's the latest and greatest. That's the future of SharePoint as well.
So modern UI has a different purpose than the old classic way?
Well, it has different capabilities. It's a different, for example, branding capabilities are different. One of the key points on maybe some people are aware that there are certain limitations in the modern experiences related on branding. You can't go completely crazy, but that's by design. The classic way of doing branding in SharePoint actually quite often blocked features to get deployed for customers. And then they started complaining on Microsoft, why isn't this functionality working, why isn't that functionality working? And then the reason was that they were using a custom master page as an example. So the classic way of extending and designing portals wasn't evergreen. So it wasn't sustainable. It wasn't a really right way of doing that. And the modern ways of doing the modern customization is more consistent. What's the right word of saying that?
Yeah,
future-proof. Maybe.
As I did my first steps with modern UI, because I'm always starting with new functionalities from a consulting perspective, and later on, the next step is a developer perspective. I said, okay, there's so less capabilities, and then I was so happy that we had Spf Fix, so I can build my own web parts, and now with the application customizer, for example,
you can do fully custom UIs as well, Yeah,
because in the old way, you would do this with a master page or some other stuff, and then I was happy, okay, now we have our possibilities, and then I was talking with my developers, and they said, yeah, it seems like that there's a reinvention, so we had everything in classic, then we had nearly nothing in modern, and now everything
comes to the modern side. Yes, absolutely. And it's one of the big things which we're going to talk about tomorrow also in the SPF Fix session is the fact that the SharePoint framework is evolving to be the Microsoft 365 component. So you can actually then implement not only SharePoint, but also Teams tabs can be implemented using SharePoint framework, and then also Office add-ins and Outlook extensions with SharePoint framework. And that means that you have a one unified development model for developers to learn to extend anything in Office 365 or Microsoft 365, whatever we're going to call it. So.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward for this Office add-in capabilities, because when you have so many different options to develop, I think that you have to get some experience, and if you can use the same tool chain, it was a hard step for us switching from our old Visual Studio Farm solution to Spf Fix. But now we say, okay, we feel familiar with this, and if you say, okay, we can build nearly everything.
And one of the key things which obviously talks to the benefit of SharePoint Framework is that we built the modern SharePoint using SharePoint Framework as well. So it's not just a model for developers to extend to Microsoft 365. We actually build our own experiences using the same tooling. So it means that we will not just introduce a new adding model or a new extensibility model. No, because we're using the same model.
Yeah.
This is the first time that's happening. Even with the farm solutions, Microsoft wasn't really using farm solutions. We were using features, but not farm solutions to extend SharePoint.
Yeah.
So that talks to the benefit of SharePoint Framework having a sustainable model and a long-running vision. So people are able to bet on that. So.
What are you thinking about Power Apps and Power Automate? Because when I have the discussion with my developers, so the hardcore developers, I say that's not a developer tool, that's something maybe for the customer or the consultants. What is your opinion?
Well, I think, to be fair, I'm not a specialist on Power Apps or Power Automate, but they're good tools, they're low code, easily approachable tools, and they are, like you said, they're targeted mainly for, well, mainly, not only, but mainly for the customers themselves who actually then modify the experience. And I wouldn't call them as a professional development tools, as the professional development tool in Microsoft 365 is then SharePoint Framework, or that's the vision where we're heading now. They are great tools to empower the power users, or whatever we call them nowadays. I don't know, they were called information workers at some point, and now they're maybe power users or whatever the citizen developers, whatever people are using. But they're great tools, and you can do simple things, but they're limited. So if you need to do really hardcore development or professional development, SharePoint Framework and then Azure and the backend on that side definitely is the right way to do. And there's the licensing impact as well.
Yes, for sure. When you're thinking about some hardcore developers who are building farm solutions, because in Germany I would say we have a lot of old farm solution developer right now. What would be the first steps you would recommend them to do when they want to be a Microsoft 365 developer?
Well, definitely, we have a lot of free material and training material available in our documentation. So that we have tutorials, we have videos, we have training packages, hands-on labs, demos, samples. So really getting started on things is just following up on the tutorials. There's a really simple getting started Hello World, the step 1, 2, 3, 4. And then kind of gradually accepting the direction where we're heading. Because I think one of the problems what we're seeing, and I was a farm solution developer as well, is the fact that people are like, no, I don't want to learn anything new. I'm good at what I do. But then at the same time, farm solutions is a technology which we created back in 2006. It's now 2019.
Yes.
So it's more than a decade from that moment. And learning the SharePoint Framework ways of doing development makes you not just a SharePoint developer. Because then you're a web developer, then you're a modern web developer. You can target your code against any other application as well. And that really kind of provides the value for classic developers to learn the new ways of doing stuff as well.
How long do you think would it take to get the first steps? When I'm doing it between my usual projects and then I want to say, okay, now I'm ready for my first real project.
Good question. How long did it take for you to actually accept that?
Yeah, I think it depends. For me, for example, it took several months. So it was not a year, but I'm not sure how many months it were. But
it really comes down, like you said, it really comes down on the projects and getting involved in those kind of customers asking those kind of extensibility, not the farm solutions, which also comes down on us as a Microsoft. We need to educate our customers on the right ways of extending things. So I would say, like you said, few months maybe, actively working in a customer projects, then you're already up in the speed of learning the new ways of doing stuff. You've learned different extensibility, different ways of doing things. I'd say months probably is a good thing. But really what impacts, at least from my perspective, what impacts on that one is definitely the fact that are you accepting or are you in denial? And when you go to the approval stage from the denial, it's easier to learn the new things.
Yeah, that's for everything the same here.
Yes, and it's IT, it's computer science. It evolves so fast that we just need to accept that we need to learn new things. And learning new things will increase the value you as a developer as well.
Yeah, and if it makes fun, then
Yeah, that's true,
it's
and
much
it's fun
easier.
as well. Yeah, that's true. That is true.
Yeah, a few weeks ago we had the Ignite.
Yep.
What were the most important announcements for you?
For me, as in Microsoft, or me as a individual person, or as a as a development platform side of the house?
As a developer.
Well, obviously, in the developer platform side of the house, the big thing for us is really the Microsoft 365 components. We openly said that we're heading to the direction where the SharePoint framework is going to be renamed as something else. The decision what it will be called hasn't yet been done. The development model remains the same, but it's going to be renamed something else, which is cross Microsoft 365.
Yep.
And then the Fluid framework is a really cool thing there as well. So you can take advantage of the almost real-time collaboration protocol of communicating across the world between people. So your components in my computer, I can do something, and that status of that component can be transmitted to anybody else across the world, in New Zealand as an example, to their computer UI, using the web technologies and completely seamless. And that's really cool. What are the scenarios and things what you can build on that? We'll see. It's one of those things where we are also expecting or waiting for the partner visions and ideas what people are able to build on top of that. And sure, modern portals. Lookbook, really cool.
Yeah.
The lookbook.microsoft.com. Go and check it out, lookbook.microsoft.com. You can actually have a look on what are the modern portals, what are the latest capabilities, and you can also provision those portals to your own tenant if you're a tenant administrator. That's a really cool thing as well. Yeah. Because if you're a consultant, you need to do some pre-sales or you need to demonstrate what is a modern SharePoint. You can go to the lookbook.microsoft.com and then get a free tenant from Microsoft and then just provision example content. And that's a really powerful thing as well.
Yeah, that's cool. I tried this, so it's very easy if you need a demo environment.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. I have to check here.
Yeah. Okay.
This morning, I think on Ignite it was announced as well. It was this Visual Studio Online. Does this affect us when we are developing with Spf Fix?
It's an option. The Visual Studio Online, we used to have a Visual Studio Napa at some point, which basically is a browser-based Visual Studio. And Visual Studio Online is kind of an evolution out of that one. And you can definitely do development in the browser, in the Visual Studio Online for SharePoint Framework as a developer. That is an option. Is it a preferred option? Not necessarily. It's your call. But you can do modifications on the code. You can do adjustments of the code easily now in browser using the Visual Studio Online. And that should be, I think there's even blog posts available how to do that as a CI/CD together with DevOps
Azure
and
DevOps,
all of that make to work properly. So it's an interesting direction that you don't need to have any specific other tooling. You don't need to pay hundreds of euros to get the Visual Studio up and running and all of that. So, but it doesn't really change Visual Studio Code is also online, free. There are free other options as well.
Yeah, I recognize that I only need my Visual Studio Code and then I have everything on my machine. In the past it was more setting up a virtual machine and then working right in there. So you needed very powerful notebook to do your stuff. Yeah. I have one other point from the keynote this morning because SharePoint Spaces was mentioned there. I think it was very silent the last months for SharePoint Spaces, and I thought, okay, maybe it has died before it could be really born. Are there some developing stuff or so for us in SharePoint Spaces?
So the SharePoint Spaces is going to public preview pretty soon, and then in the first steps, it's not really for developer, but there is a development story behind of that as well. So it is using Babylon.js to create those web parts. Those web parts are being built using SharePoint Framework, and then they are using Babylon.js to provide that 3D experience. And as a developer, you can actually implement Spaces experiences as well. So that is an option which is coming. We were at some point even looking into releasing some of the out-of-the-box web parts as an open source solution. so that as a developer you can easily learn how to make those things happen. Now, will that happen? We'll see. But there will be a developer story on that as well.
Cool.
Which is really cool. Yeah.
Because I was so excited when it was announced I think it was last year.
Yep.
And then I thought, okay, you don't hear anything. Oh, I'm so sorry.
It's been slightly silent for a while, and now it's ready to go again on public and start the public preview. And then when the public preview starts, we can actually start walking and talking about the developer experience as well.
Okay, so I had one remark here. What can we expect for SPF Fix in 2020? Maybe something.
So the big things for SharePoint Framework, obviously, like I said, the changing of the name to Microsoft 365 components or something similar. Marketing needs to make that decision. We're looking into enabling store support. So you as a developer can implement web parts and then expose them in the app source. And then make money out of them because it is a big ecosystem in Office 365. We're looking into having the Fluid framework natively integrated there as well, so you can easily take advantage of that one. Those probably are the biggest ones. I would have to go back on my slides for tomorrow to remember this, but I think those are the big ones.
So we should visit your session tomorrow, and then we get the brand new updates.
Absolutely, and obviously we have weekly community calls. We have videos, recordings, which we do in the YouTube channel. Those are super valuable as well, where we always repeat the latest and greatest in the Ignite and whatever is happening. So.
And it's a community call, so everybody can join, because I often get the question, how can I join the community? Where can I contribute? Because some are very, very unsure what they should do.
And there's the simplest address is akms/sppmp. From there, people can actually find our samples, our open source projects, our community call details. We actually have a community call, open community call every single week, where we have live demos around SharePoint development, and then a monthly community call as a separate one. And they are open for anybody to join. And then getting active on the GitHub is an option. We have like more than 100 web part samples available. You can contribute your samples, and when you contribute, you get acknowledged as a person and potentially your company in our public messaging as well. So that's kind of a giving back for the people who are contributing.
Okay, that's cool. I've run out of questions. So, do you have any closing remarks?
Just out of curiosity, you said you're a farm solution, ex-farm solution developer, and you made the transition to the SharePoint framework. How has the journey been for you?
At the beginning, it was very exciting, and we had a lot of frustrating moments because we said, okay, in the old world, we know what to do. Sometimes nowadays, we have even the situation that we say, okay, I know I would implement this as an event receiver, and now I don't have the possibility. What should I do? It's a complete different world, and as you said, if I deny the change, then it doesn't really work. So I have to say, okay, I'm open-minded. Maybe I say, okay, I use Power Automate, aka Flow for this, and here I'm developing a web part and so on. But if you are coming from the old world, you have always a comparison.
True. True, and it was so different. But if you have a look on all of the partners in the Expo area, as an example, a lot of these people are building their experiences using modern extensibility, which is great. And maybe for our closing remarks, everybody should get involved on the community stuff, what we're having. So we have plenty of open source projects, controls, tooling, CLIs, PowerShell, PnP PowerShell, or if you don't want to contribute, consume them. If you don't want to consume them, join the community calls to stay up to date on what's happening, because then people will learn how to do the recommended ways of extending SharePoint. And we are pretty open on the community calls as well, where we are heading. And if there's any questions, please join the calls and have a question, because we want to help people to learn the right ways of extending the whole Office 365.
Okay, then thank you very much.
Yep, thank you.
And then everybody should visit your sessions on the keynote, especially on Thursday.
Yep, thank you.
Bye.